Are you a parent who wants to give your child a financial head start? Well, you are in the right place. Welcome to Beyond Piggy Banks. I'm George, and in each episode we explore simple, practical ways to shape your child's financial future. And the best part, you don't need a financial degree, and you don't need a lot of money to begin. The earlier you act, the bigger their advantage becomes. Let's build their future. In the last episode, we met the first danger, ourselves. The procrastinator who waits for a perfect moment that never comes, the reactor who panics when markets move, and the follower who mistakes noise for strategy. We learn to name them, and the moment you can name something, it loses its power over you. Today, we meet two dangers of a very different kind. These ones don't announce themselves. They don't feel urgent. They don't trigger an emotional response. In fact, they are almost invisible, which is exactly what makes them so effective at quietly destroying wealth. They work in the background, slowly, consistently, every single day. They are inflation and fees. Now, if you listen to episode 1, inflation is not a stranger to you. We touched on it briefly when we talked about why money sitting still is not money being protected. But today, we go deeper. Because understanding how inflation erodes your child's future, in real numbers, over real time, changes the way you see every financial decision you make. And fees? Most parents never think about fees. They seem small percentages, fractions, decimal points. But over 18 years, those decimal points have a name. And that name is tens of thousands. So what is inflation? Inflation is the general increase in prices over time, which reduces the purchasing power of money. In simple terms, the same amount of money buys less tomorrow than it does today. But what actually causes prices to rise? Well, there are three main drivers. 1. The cost of making things, energy, raw materials, wages. When production becomes more expensive, that cost gets passed on to you. Think about oil. When the price of oil rises, it doesn't just affect your fuel tank. It affects the truck that delivers your groceries. It affects the factory that makes your child's shoes, the eating in their school, the packaging on everything you buy. Oil touches almost every stage of production. So, when its price rises, everything else follows. And finally, supply and demand. When more people want something than there is available, prices go up. Simple as that. There are other forces at play too. There are global events, government policy, currency movements, but we don't go down that rabbit hole today. What matters for us as parents building a financial future for our children is understanding one thing clearly: what inflation does to your money over time. It doesn't feel dramatic at first. A coffee that cost €3 5 years ago now costs €3.50. A school trip that used to cost €80 now costs €100. Small shifts, easy to ignore. But here is the number that changes everything. The long-term average inflation rate in developed economies sits around 2 to 3% a year. And that doesn't sound like much. But at 3% inflation, the purchasing power of money halves roughly every 24 years. Your child is born today. By the time they are 24, everything costs twice as much. And if your money is sitting in a savings account earning 1%, you are not saving. You are slowly losing. This is exactly what we talked about in episode 1, the piggy bank, the savings account, the money sitting still feeling safe. It isn't safe, it's melting. Not dramatically, not overnight, but quietly, consistently, every single year. Inflation is taking a percentage of whatever you have stored away and erasing it. That is why the first step of this system, before compounding, before automation, before any of the allies we've built, is simply this: your money must be working. At the absolute minimum, it must be keeping pace with inflation. Ideally, it should be beating it. Because breaking even with inflation means your child's future purchasing power is protected. And beating it, even by a few percentage points, is where real wealth begins to build. That is the foundation, and that is the reason we invest. So that's inflation, the danger you can't control. Now, let's talk about the one you can: fees. Sometimes you wonder about the amount of fees out there: management fees, broker fees, advisory fees, transaction fees, and the list goes on and on. There are even institutions that charge custody fees, as if we are still dealing with paper certificates locked in some vault somewhere. Each one on its own seem harmless. A fraction of a percent here, a small annual charge there, easy to overlook, easy to accept without question. But here is what most parents never stop to calculate. Let's take a real example. You start with one-time contribution of 5,000. Then you invest 100 a month, every month, for 18 years. And we consider a 7% average annual return. That makes the total invested over time 26,600. With low fees, around 0.2%, which is typical of a simple index fund, you end up with roughly 59,000. More than double what you put in. That is the system working exactly as designed. Now, add a fund management fee, a platform fee, an advisory fee, stack them all together, and you are easily at 2% a year. Easily. Same starting amount, same monthly contribution, same return, same 18 years. You end up with roughly 47,000. Let that land for a moment. The market performed identically, you contributed identically, the only thing that changed was the fees. And that one difference cost your child 12,000. 12,000 gone. Not to the market, not to bad luck, not to a crash or a crisis, to fees. On a total investment of 26,600, that is nearly half of everything you ever put in. Silently taken, a fraction of a percent at time. Think about what 12,000 means in real terms. That is a first car, that is a full semester of university. That is the financial cushion your child needs at the exact moment they step into adult life. Uncertain, excited, figuring it all out. That money could have been there, waiting for them. Instead, it was taken. Not all at once, not in a way you would ever notice, a fraction of a percent, charged silently every single year for 18 years. And here is what makes it truly painful. You did everything right. You started early, you contributed consistently, you let the system run. The market rewarded you. But somewhere between your contributions and your child's future, fees were sitting at the table, taking their share every single year. 12,000. Nearly half of everything you ever invested, gone, compounding against you. The same force working in reverse. And remember, every option has a cost. Every advisor has a cost. Every actively managed fund promising to beat the market has a cost. Sometimes those costs are worth it, but you should always know exactly what you are paying and what is truly costing your child's future in real numbers. And this is just fees. We haven't even talked about taxes yet. That's a conversation for another episode. But I'll say this now. When you add taxes on top of fees, the total silent strain on your child's future is significant. Far more than most parents ever realize. One fee is not that bad. Put them all together, year after year, compounding quietly in the background, and you will be amazed how much money goes out the window. So, what do you do with all of this? You can't control inflation. It has existed for as long as economies have existed, and it will continue long after this episode ends. But you can control what your money does in response to it. And that, as we established in episode 1, is exactly why we invest. Fees are different. Fees are a choice. And that choice begins with the very first decision you make. What you invest in, where you invest it, and how that invested is managed. Get that decision right, and fees become a minor footnote in your child's story. Get it wrong? And as we just saw, thousands quietly disappear before your child ever sees them. That first decision is not complicated, but it is critical. In the next episode, we will look at exactly that. The difference between passive and active investing. Two approaches, very different costs, and a very clear answer on which one serves your child's future better. The numbers we just looked at, they will make a lot more sense once you understand what is sitting behind them. I'm George, and I'm here because your child deserves the advantage we never had. We are done hoping for the best. We are building it. Subscribe to Beyond Piggy Banks on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. The clock is ticking. Let's get to work.